clarification around for anybody to clarify. Hang on, last week was Road Safety Week here in New Zealand. Thank you. Yes, and we are in many ways a week behind you, New Zealanders. Yeah, I want to leave plenty of time for you to get clarity on what your task is, and because your task at the end of this one is to undertake a safe system assessment. It's been modified for training purposes and trimmed down to try and make it so it's not a massively time-consuming exercise for you. And we've set you up pretty nicely for it, but we'll spend a good bit of time at the end just working through that. Now, I remind you, your session's been recorded, but at the moment, can't see you, can't hear you, but you can put your hand up as we've done before, and we can unmute you if you want to get clarification or have a little bit of a chat about something. Your assignments, all the assignments received have been marked now, and if you go into Schoology, you will be able to see your mark and also see some commentary around anything that either, you know, pull your score down a little bit in terms of the marking, or maybe just something I wanted to point out in terms of a bit of clarification on something that that you need to keep in mind as you do safe system assessments. And really the overwhelming responses we got from the assignments were fantastic. I mean, your road safety knowledge as a group is fantastic. Really, all my comments were not about road safety in terms of what affects risk or what treatments are appropriate or analysing the issues or the like. It was more just safe system assessment process and procedure related things in terms of, well, actually under a safe system assessment, we'd categorise that over here, not here. So that's really the only thing that was sort of pulling some marks down. So have a read of that. And again, like if you've got your head clearly around exposure, likelihood and severity under these safe system assessments, that's going to be a big part of the marking of your actual safe system assessment at the end of this this module that you go out and do. You've got some sites they are about to be released to you, some designs, and you'll be doing safe system assessments on those designs. Some of you will no doubt have seen these designs, or some of them you definitely won't have seen. They're for your local area, and some of you, I dare say, have had involvement in those. And so there's no real clarity around if you could do a safe system assessment on your own design or something you've been involved in. So road safety audits are pretty clear about that. You cannot undertake a road safety audit on your own design or anything that you've been part of. However, safe system assessments depends what they're being done for. Like I actively encourage a designer or a project manager to undertake their own sort of quick safe system assessment on their project, but there is a sort of formalized process where you would get an independent. So we're not going to have that as a major issue, an issue at all, really, for the training, because if you were involved, you'll be doing it from your involvement. If you weren't, if you haven't had any involvement in it, you'll be looking at it from a fresh set of eyes. But I'll explain this more to you at the end of the session and show you all the different bits and pieces. But as per usual, please put anything into the chat as we go, or the Q&A, and Kathy will feed that information to me as we tick along. Yeah, some interesting intersections chosen by people as well. I enjoyed exploring some of the more problematic ones. And thank you also to, I think it was Kevin, who's found that raised pedestrian crossing and has made some commentary around it and then a bit of discussion. That was fantastic. So Kathy, prize there for Kevin for finding the site and confirming it. So this session, we're going to point you at the guidelines for safe system assessment, the Austroads ones, and then some jurisdictional guidelines which provide more clarity, and And Kathy's now uploaded the fact sheets that we've produced to try to give even more clarity around some of those grey areas in safe system assessment guidance. We're going to look into completing a safe system assessment matrix, which is the meat of a safe system assessment, writing a safe system assessment report, so what elements would go into that, and then a bit more into this categorizing of treatments into primary or supporting treatments. That one tends to be the thing that people get tripped up on the most in their safe system assessment. And it's because I think that, as I said at the end of last session, the term primary trips people up because they think it's the their best recommendation, or what they think should be done, whereas it's actually trying to categorize that infrastructure under these categorizations. Anyway, we'll delve into that, and remember to count your wallies, of course, because that will be a quiz question at the end of this one. And Kathy, if I'm right, it might be the only quiz question at the end of this one, or there might be one.
I keep changing my mind on that, Ken, so no.
All right, that's fine.
It's not.
Okay, we'll keep going. So we've covered off the safe system nicely, from the principles of the safe system, the different elements of the safe system, different diagrams floating around of the safe system. Sorry, I'm writing myself a note to cover something later. Different elements of it, lots of different diagrams out there, as you know, lots of interaction between those elements and those principles which we covered, aiming at no death or serious injury and people making mistakes, shared responsibility, that people are vulnerable. We really delved into that exposure, likelihood and severity. That's so important to safe system assessment. And then we were into the injury curves, and we had these ones early on to talk about, and you're no doubt very familiar with those. Some of you are probably delving into the finer details of more elaborate curves in terms of adding MAIDs 3 serious injuries and doing it with the current fleet and things like that. For now, though, these are pretty good guidance in terms of where severity changes. And we've got some more information about angles and crashes, vulnerable road users in crashes, and crashes with poles, side impact with poles and the like. That's all, in the mix to help you understand that severity score that you're going to give for the crash type that you are envisaging in the design or in the existing conditions. And it's not meant to be that you are able to, say above that speed everything is bad, and below that speed everything is fine. It's a sort of spectrum. It helps you get some clarity around the scoring. And as I showed you, and we've uploaded there, we're playing around with some sort of graded scoring sheets in terms of colours to help just give that impression of a general indication. So I think from those early sessions, the looking at some of the specific vulnerable road users and their characteristics, looking at treatments, categorizing them into into impacting on exposure, likelihood and severity, I think we're pretty well placed to jump into now the mechanics of the safe system assessment. So the overarching document that I think a lot of you will be familiar with or have seen or at least know exists is the Off-Road Safe System Assessment Framework 2016. As I say, this, with a lot of sort of new tools or the like that are being produced, was a first release, and there's been some discoveries of elements to that maybe could be improved. Now, some of them, the industry has done a little bit of work, and we've got some more clarity around them, and we've established a generally accepted way of operating, and some of our fact sheets help with that. Some of the The local jurisdictional guidance, I think, helps with that. So the Victorian guidelines and the South Australian guidelines, and apart from the front cover, these documents are pretty much the same. So that helps us in a bit of sort of industry way to do safe system assessment. So you've got those in your memory stick and on Schoology, and then I think that this will be an area where hopefully Austroads will take this on and do a sort of version 2 of the safe system assessment framework. And I know some New Zealanders have been doing some good thinking around how that could be improved. I mean, Colin Brodie was the project manager of this original one, and then a lot of others in New Zealand have been using it in bits and pieces, and some of the people even in this group have provided some commentary around ways that it possibly could be improved or scored. And certainly Mark Newsom there's provided some commentary around a really good way, I think, that could be explored to look into some of these scoring elements. So it's a fairly new process. It's version 1 of the guidance, and we'll keep working on it. So you will discover deficiencies or things that you think could be improved, and yeah, let's keep sharing that as an industry and keep improving it. The document itself or the assessment framework or the process is meant to be very, very generic in terms of scalable, the depth that it could be done, and almost what the purpose of your assessment is. And that can be very useful. I'm at the moment pondering the use of the framework for a more generic motorcycle safety strategy, I suppose, and breaking things up into that exposure and likelihood and severity by thinking about it across the spectrum of elements of the safe system, not just any one of those elements. So almost using it as a framework for a strategy as such. And it works fairly well. I mean, there's some limitations and some interpretation that needs to be done, but to me, that was a good example of the versatility of this framework. I mean, in one sense, it is just a risk assessment methodology. It's just got some tweaks and some specifics around it that focus it in on or make it more appropriate for roads as opposed to general risk assessment and some of those safe system principle alignment with those. So the first thing you do in a safe system assessment is to start to document or understand the purpose, the scope of this project, and the context in which this project is being undertaken. So the Austroads document has these prompt questions. You are free to add prompt questions, find out other things, but you've got to paint a bit of a picture of what's going on in terms of what's the project, or what if you're just doing an existing condition safe system assessment, what is the existing conditions, what are the aspirations for that and the like. This is where you'd put in things like movement and place categorization or road use hierarchy or road function, growth, land use, different amenities, speed conditions, speed limits, any data you have, any modeling that might be available to you to get an understanding of changes that could be happening, the types of road users that are there, vehicle composition, or any other things that sort of help set that context of the project. So this, this is really often done either in a workshop with the project team, there's almost like the kickoff meeting as such, as you're doing a safe system assessment. Sometimes, though, I just send these questions and get them to send back answers with documents if they don't really want that workshop aspect of it, or they think that, I'll just hand you all the information and you can work it through. So they're there and they're available for you to use. For the assignment as part of this course, you're not going to get a huge amount of this background, and you know, that's one of the things we sort of trimmed out to try to lessen the burden of an assignment for you. But certainly in a safe system assessment, you do a good bit of documenting of that and get that context. So the next part of a safe system assessment that you're going to need to be doing is the Safe System Assessment Matrix. And this is it here. And some of you have already been playing around with this, I know, and that's great. Some of you probably haven't been, and that's fine as well. So what we've got here is a matrix, which these are, don't worry about the words in there at the moment. They're just giving an idea of some of the things that might impact on that cell. But the three rows are exposure, likelihood, and severity. So there you go. I was not just putting you through that as just fun. It's actually very relevant to your safe system matrix. Across the columns, sorry, you see here that we've got crash types. So crash types and then crash users. Road users that are involved in crashes. But we've got run-off road, head-on, intersection, other, which we'll come back to. And then we've got any crash that involves the pedestrian being the one that is injured or killed, and cyclists the same, and motorcyclists the same. So for these three, the type of crash, as in was it right turn against, or was it run off road, or was it head on, is it actually includes all of them, any type of crash that involves that road user. These ones, the run-off road, the head-on, and the intersection, they are for passenger vehicles. Could include heavy vehicles if your percentages of heavy vehicles are somewhat low. You may, however, decide that you want to make heavy vehicles their own category for some reason. But most people, the percentage of heavy vehicles simply alters the severity score. It may touch into your likelihood score if you believe that some characteristics of the heavy vehicle alter that likelihood. So potentially, you know, swept path and it's sweeping over pedestrian areas or the like, that would be a likelihood factor, possibly, and a severity factor as well. But on sort of these state highway in rural areas and the like, or those sorts of things, it's generally the severity that alters. So the other really then tends to be crashes involving passenger vehicles that are not categorized there. So it could be side swipe, it could be rear end, it could be crashes with light rail, with trams or the like. It could be level crossing crashes, something that has not been covered in the others that you have identified while you're out there. And usually it then becomes this combination of crash types, which is a bit murky in terms of how you score it, but that's okay. So then what you do is in each of these cells of the matrix, you put a score between 0 and 4. And 0 is, I suppose, the best, and 4 is the worst under the Safe System Assessment scoring. And I'll just briefly show you here that you get these score sheets, reference sheets. We've provided you those, and it's actually going to be in it's in your memory stick on Schoology, and it's in all the guidelines that we've provided have this same guidance. So it's a score of 0, 1, and it goes down, and then they've got exposure, likelihood, severity, and they've got a bit of a description there. Now, some of these are quite clear, fairly clear cut. So let's look at a score of 1 for volume, for exposure. And you can see that run-off road, head-on, or other crash types, AADT is less than 1,000 vehicles a day. There it is. It's clear cut. For cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcycle crash types, volumes are less than 10 units per day. That one probably gets a little less clear cut often because of the lack of counts for cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclists often. Some jurisdictions are getting better at that. I always marveled at the massive traffic data we have in terms of passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, and the absolute lack of data in terms of pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists often. However, some jurisdictions are getting better than others. So if though you don't have that data, you make a educated guess at it based on your knowledge and maybe chatting to the project team or what you can discover, or being out there, having a look, looking at the amount, volumes and the like, and then you make a call on it. Now remember, these are sort of scores just to help indicate risk. So I'll go up to 2 and 3 and 4, and you can see a 2 there is between 1,000 and 5,000 AADT for passenger vehicles, between 10 and 50 for the vulnerable road users, 3, 5,000 to 10,000, and 4 is above 10,000, and 50 to 100, and 100 plus units a day crossing or being exposed to those crashes. Now there's a bit of debate around about these numbers and are they right, and should they, 10,000 vehicles a day in the scheme of things isn't a huge number on a lot of the the major arterials or the like, and so there's a lot of projects that get a 4 across the board for exposure, certainly in a lot of the crash types, but they are what they are for now, and they're fairly clean cut in how to get to that score. So some of you got a bit of feedback in your assignments about the exposure, and you tried to, I think, or you sort of complicated it a bit more than you needed to. And I think if you had seen this and read this, it probably would have cleared things up. But really the exposure is just saying, here's the number and it correlates to this, and that's the exposure score. It's as easy as that. A score of 0, there is no exposure to a certain crash type. That might mean that there is no side flow or intersecting road, no cyclists, no pedestrians, no motorcyclists. So that might be that you're doing a mid-block section, section of freeway or something, and there's no side road. So there are no intersections. So your exposure to intersection crashes is 0. It may be that, again, let's take a motorway and cyclists are banned on the motorway, and you genuinely don't have any cyclists on the motorway. That would be a 0. Now, like some people, it's pretty rare to put a 0, but maybe that motorway cyclist one is a good one if you've banned cyclists and they generally do that. But people say, but then you get that random Dutch tourist who arrives from the airport and then puts on their backpack and rides their bike down the motorway. So with those sort of things, it's probably not enough for me, once a year that something will happen or the like to warrant scoring it, giving it a score above the 0. But I might make a note of that in some of these other areas within the Safe System Assessment Report, which are less quantitative but more the qualitative stuff. And it wouldn't stop me making a recommendation if I thought that random, very random event could be something to be thought about. So that's your exposure score. And so you'll just simply look at these descriptions, get your numbers or make an assessment, and then you put a score in here. 4, 4, 4, 4. And that's pretty common to see that those 4 cells will have the same exposure number. As I say, unless for some reason you've got no intersections, or you have potentially a barrier system in between that is, not going to get breached by a large risk. So maybe you have a rigid barrier system or a high containment barrier system in the middle or something like that, and you've decided that there is no possibility of a head-on as a result of that, then you put a 0. Then you make some judgment calls on the pedestrian, cyclists and motorcyclists, unless you happen to have data on that, which would be pretty great. And so maybe you say 2 there, 1 there, and add motorcyclists a 4 as well, because I don't know, my rule of thumb is motorcyclists are about 1% of AADT if you don't have any data. It varies depending on quite a number of things, but that's not a bad rule of thumb across Australia and New Zealand. It's going up though. So anyway, then you get to scoring your likelihood. And this is where you factor in a whole lot of different likelihood factors. In fact, you've got to try to factor all of them in that you're seeing on the site. The speed, the geometry, the shoulders, the delineation, the different roadside features, all of that, the number of conflict points, all sorts of things. And then you come back to look at your scoring sheet. Now, this one, the likelihood scoring, is fairly subjective. Okay, that's another thing that people are a little bit interested in looking, can we do better in this safe system assessment framework? However, it's okay, and I'll explain why later, that I might score the likelihood something and you might score something different, but that's okay. That works out in a safe system assessment. So let's have a look at one for safe for the likelihood scoring. It is highly unlikely that a given crash type will occur. That's it. That's all the information you get. Let's go up to a 2. A 2. It is unlikely that a given crash type will occur. It is likely that a given crash type will occur. We'll get you a 3. You can immediately see the subjectivity to this, can't you? 4 has a little bit more information to it, doesn't it? The likelihood of individual road user error leading to a crash is high given the infrastructure in place, e.g. high approach speeds to a sharp curve, priority movement control, filtering, right turn across several opposing lanes, and high speeds. So you get a little bit more of an indication there. A zero, there is only minimal chance that a given crash type will occur for an individual road user given the infrastructure in place. Only extreme behaviour or substantial vehicle failure could lead to the crash. This may mean, for example, the 2 streams do not cross at grade, or pedestrians do not cross the road. So that some of that could be pushed into the exposure score to a degree, but the reality is it's very, very rare. I don't think I've ever given a 0 for likelihood, and that is because we are dealing with humans and they make mistakes. So there's always that something there. But you do this as a relative score, likelihood score. So the reality is that crashes on the road network, you'd be putting everything in the highly unlikely category, wouldn't you? At a whole, like at an individual sense, because crashes are very rare, they're highly unlikely, but the amount of exposure to that alters it. But in order to not lump exposure into that, we do this in a relative sense. So is this bit of road more likely or less likely than other bits of road on the network to precipitate crashes through the infrastructure that's there. And so this is where, you know, your fours are your parts of the network that are almost encouraging crashes with the infrastructure to a degree. So, you know, adverse crossfall around a curve or something like that. You know, these turns across multiple lanes of high-speed traffic where we know we're going to have dynamic visual obstruction issues or masking style issues. Yeah, so some pretty significant deficiencies up here, down to some really quite well-performing bits of road in a relative sense that have good features that reduce the likelihood of these crashes. So you get there and you start to mark your scores. You maybe 2, 1. No, let's give that a 2 because head on. No, if it was a low volume road, you'd probably put your head on lower than your runoff road, obviously, because your runoff road could happen all the time. But for a head on to happen, it would be need to be there. The opposing vehicle. And what's that? There's that research paper that I referred to earlier was saying around the 6,500 vehicles a day is actually where that change happens. Intersections. Now the intersection, we've taken the intersection score from the addition of the mainline AADT plus the side road AADT. That was, again, a bit of clarity. That one's probably still up for debate. There's a lot of people who say, well, no, it should be just the minor road because you can't have a crash without a vehicle coming from the minor road. But nonetheless, we produced a fact sheet on that as an interim stopgap before the jurisdictions in Austrode actually make some decisions on that. And then the likelihood of the crashes is you know, is it signalised? Is it not? Is it is there good sight distance? What are the conflict points? How many conflict points are there? So you might minimise conflict points, and you'd be tempted to put that into an alteration of exposure, but that will actually, in a safe system assessment at least, be an alteration to your likelihood score. So that will bring the score down a little. So we're going to go. We're going to go with a 3 there, maybe. And you know, you go through each of these. Now, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists, well, you're going to make a judgment call on each of those. And we're going to go with a 2 and 2. And motorcyclists, though, I often say, well, it'd be very rare that the motorcycle score, in likelihood at least, would be less than any of the other scores, because you take an intersection at a score of 3 here for likelihood, the motorcyclists are going to have a worse time at that intersection because they're all those challenges of a motorcycle. They're inherently more risky. They're smaller. They're hidden behind things. Well, they've only got 2 wheels, so there's instability issues and the like. The vulnerability of the motorcyclist, though, don't factor that into your likelihood score. That's a severity issue. So I'm going to give motorcyclists a 4, and then we go to the severity of the crash. So now you've put aside all of this likelihood and exposure, and you're saying the crash is happening now. Now, how bad is it going to be? And you're going to take into account then the speed that the crash is happening at, the feature, the type of crash, the roadside features. Are they frangible? Are they energy absorbing somehow? Are we redirecting energy with barrier systems or the like? What's the proportion of heavy vehicles in terms of more mass and more severity of injury and the like? So you sort of weigh all that in, and you utilize those scoring sheets that we've given you to help guide you on this, and you make your call. I'm going to go a 4 there because runoff road into poles and trees can be pretty severe. the head-on's down at a 2 because it's less. This is a complete hypothetical. I'm just rambling things off the top of my head at the moment. It would be absolutely about analysing your thing. Intersection, we're going to go in between as a 3. Other, we're going with a 1 because maybe we're just thinking about side swipe crashes and we know that they're quite a low severity crash type. Pedestrians, we're going to go a 4, cyclists a 4, motorcyclists a 4, vulnerable road users, and maybe the scenario is somewhat high speed. So when the crashes happen, it's going to be bad. And so you've managed to sort of score all of the cells then of the matrix. And then you go about multiplying. So you multiply the exposure by the likelihood by the severity to get an end score, and you get 32 off that one, would you? 16, 16, 32, yes. So you've got 4 times 2 times 4 is 32. And you go about doing that for all of them. So you do, we've got 16 for that one. Anyway, I'm not going to do them all at this stage, but you get a score for each of the crash types out of 64. It's starting to get be a messy slide. So you get a score out of 64 for each of them, and then you add all of these scores up. So you add across the bottom, add them up to get a score out of 448. 0 being perfect alignment with safe system principles, 448 being the worst alignment with safe system principles. Your project will be somewhere in that spectrum. Now, you can see then in the severity score in the reference sheet, you've got some information. Again, it requires you to have an understanding of biomechanical tolerance of injury and crash forces and kinetic energy, which you all have now. Should a crash occur, it is unlikely that it will result in fatality or serious injury to any road user involved. Kinetic energies are moderate, and the majority of the time are effectively dissipated before reaching the road user. That would give you a 2. And you can see it goes up there to 4s, being, should the crash occur, it is highly likely that it will result in fatality or serious injury to any road user involved. Kinetic energies are high enough to cause fatal serious injury, and it's unlikely that the forces will be dissipated before reaching the road user. And by meaning that dissipated before they reach the road user, that's sort of energy absorption through barriers, through impact absorbing features, crash cushions, attenuators, or angle of crashes. So the energy's obviously still there, but it's just dissipated out into the environment or something like that. I'll pause there before I show you a example sort of completed matrix and see if we've got any comments or questions at this stage.
Thanks, Ken. Where do e-scooters sit? Are they pedestrians or?
Okay, so it's a good question. Very good question. You get to make that call. If you believe you want to just, all right, this is a different road user, tempted to lump it into the pedestrians as we do a lot of the time, but no, it's specific. It's, the volumes are there to warrant it being categorized as its own thing. Use the other category. Use that other category, and then when you do your AADT, put in your estimate on the number of e-scooters, and then obviously things like your severity will be influenced by their vulnerability, the likelihood by how they're being used and the infrastructure that's in place and those sorts of things. So you can sort of focus on and isolate it within that. Now this is probably going beyond what we should be as we're just entering you into doing this sort of stuff. there is the ability to do a single matrix for a road user like that off its own bat. So you could, in theory, take e-scooters as your entire matrix and do a full matrix on e-scooters, sort of the way I was talking about doing motorcycles, but I'm going even bigger and wider than that. But you would then be looking at what is the exposure of them, and the exposure is just going to be how many are out there, and so that'll probably be the same. That will be, will it be the same across all of them? No, it won't. It'll be the same across sort of these ones. The pedestrian cyclists and motorcyclists will be the volume of those as well. And then you do likelihood of the scooter itself running off the road, the scooter itself being involved in a head-on, the scooter itself being struck at an intersection. You might have to be like crashes with dogs or you know, something that hasn't been captured in this already, falling into the river or something like that. Actually, don't forget I said that. Falling into the river would be run-off road. Then pedestrians would be e-scooter crashes with pedestrians. Cyclists would be e-scooter crashes with cyclists, and e-scooter crashes with motorcyclists somehow. So, you know, and you'd maybe factor, you could do it in theory. So the versatility of it's there, because that would be just a risk assessment of e-scooters around the infrastructure, utilizing common crash types as your framework for assessment. But I've done that once for cyclists, and happy to share that. Those was for an off-road cycle facility. Happy to share that with anybody who's interested in these alternate uses of the framework. But in general, it's just easiest to put it as an other, or add it in with your pedestrians, as you would with like mobility scooters or people in wheelchairs and those sorts of things, who have slightly different needs and the like, but you know, generally are catered for within that pedestrian. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. Can you use more than one other category? Is the 448 fixed? Would you just use one other category and put all your other things in there?
Yeah, so the advice on that is yes, just use the one other and put multiple things within that to adjust it. And you know, you could do some elaborate weighted averages or something like that. Now, theoretically, you can add as many as you want, you know, columns to this for others and specific crash types and the like. The Victorian guidance and the South Australian guidance certainly say not to do that. So stick to the 448. We will have industry consistency. And if you've got these specific other things, you can make lots of commentary in your non-qualitative part of this, but they're trying to stick to that 448, those specific crash types, and the production of some graphs, which are what the readers of these safe system assessments are wanting to see at a high level. I'll show you those shortly. So my advice would be to stick to your 448, stick to the one other category rather than you know, adding columns to it.
Okay. Can a project have more than one safe system matrix completed?
Absolutely. We did 61 matrices for Northeast Link, which is a $9 billion road project being planned here in Melbourne. 61, I think it was. And that's certainly appropriate for the length and the changes in homogeneous sections and the different intersection forms and the like. So again, we've done you a specific fact sheet on how do you deal with a long project that has changes in land use or multiple two intersections in the project length that are completely different. Really, the two options, and I have a colleague who likes option 2 and I like option 1. So option 1 is just what I've mentioned, which is to break it up into homogeneous sections and then do a matrix for each. And you can make a nice little graphic of that, really, where you, how do I do this? Clear this. Sorry, bear with me. I'm going to clear this. So I'm going to draw right over the top of this. You know, you've got this length of road, and it's got an intersection there and a different intersection there, and you're doing the, you've been asked to do a safe system assessment on the sort of this whole upgrade. Well, then you can do, you can say, well, I'm going to split this actually into 2 sections or 3 sections, depending on how you want to do it. And you're going to say, well, I'm actually going to take all of this as one, and I'm going to do a little graph of that, and you'll see the graphs later as I show them. These are the results, basically. And I'm going to do this intersection and this little lead into it as another, because it's, you know, a different scope, and then create a nice little secondary graph there. You know, maybe the volume changes significantly at that point, or the intersection form is completely, you know, different. This one's a roundabout and this one's no, you know, this one's a giveaway or something like that. So that's one option. The other option is to do a weighted average of your score across the 2 and come up with some sort of, you won't only come up with one scoring matrix and graph, but it'll be a weighted average based on the however many sections you've sort of chopped it into to arrive at your weighted average. And you know, that can then obviously give you lots and lots of spreadsheets at the end of your safe system assessment. The reason I don't particularly like that way of doing it is the safe system assessment framework is a fairly broad brush tool of identifying risk. And I mean, we put numbers to it, we get a score out of 448. But the precision of that is, we shouldn't be too worried, you know. What I find sort of almost laughable is when we see project teams who have a score of 400 and then they are doing their project alterations and they get a score of 398, and they say, yeah, oh, we're doing a great safe system job. That's you know, the broad brushness of it means that, well, you know, you're pretty much the same. You're not doing anything new there. So anyway, that is that is one way to do it. Have a read of the fact sheet we've given you. Sorry, Kathy, more questions there?
Yeah, one more. What are the weighted averages based on? Volume or crashes or number of segments?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. What are they weighted on? How does he weight them? I think he weights them on volume. Or I'm going to have to double check. As I say, I don't use that method. And this is Chris Hall, who's much smarter than me. Let me double check that.
No worries. Thank you. That's all for now.
The other thing that is somewhat discouraged and is to go to decimal places with your numbers. There is the allowance to a 0.5, so a half score, but no more than that. The reason for that is that, again, it's just not that precision a tool, and there's too much sort of subjectiveness to some of these that you wouldn't want to do that. But you can see this example I'm going to give you, there was some 0.5s. 0.5s we often use because there's disagreement in the assessment team and you just cannot decide between a 2 and a 3. And the 2 and the 3 is actually, in the likelihood one, is often the one that gets split, because you go from unlikely to likely or whatever. So it's a very broad spectrum there. But you'll see here, and I don't expect you to be able to read the words on this. In fact, we've put this example into your notes as the whole safe system assessment. But you can see here that for the exposure, it's pretty clear because it's just saying the Ostro's trigger is this, and it's about, and it's within that trigger. There's no elaboration. There's no justification using land use or where the schools are or anything like that. That would be put into the context of that context sheet, but not in terms of once you're at this point. It's just what are the numbers and what does that spit out? What is the volume? What does it spit out? And so then you've got your score. So that's very, very clear. You'll see there, though, that when you get to the likelihood scores, there in the matrix, there's some justification of it. And the justification of your score is split into the two categories: factors that increase the likelihood and factors that decrease the likelihood. And you just dot point those out. So you've gone and you've had a look at the existing conditions in this case, and you dot point all of these different things that you've seen that you believe make you want to make that score higher or make you want to make that score lower. And those are the infrastructure characteristics that are there. So you dot point lots and lots of these out. And then you put your score there. This one got 2.5, and then the 2, and then you do the same for the severity. What are the factors in there that are making you want to make that severity score higher, and the factors that are wanting to make that severity score lower? And they're going to be the speed and the roadside hazards and the like. So you put lots of that detail in there, and you do it first of all always for the existing conditions. So if you've got a design, you've been asked to do a safe system assessment on this proposal, you still do the existing conditions first. You look at it, you give it a score. That is your baseline, your reference. That's where you're going from. So this one that we're looking at here is this new intersection, this existing intersection here, sort of comes down a hill and sort of just entering into a township. There you can see a bit more of it. It's got some vehicles turning in. It's got some, not much there's a bit of drop off there. There's some trees, some power poles. There's a big creek drainage structure there. And then this is their proposal. So their proposal, well, they've actually got 3 options. And a safe system assessment is a great way to compare options, absolutely. So their first option is to say, well, we're actually going to make a roundabout out of this intersection. Their second option is to signalise the intersection with a modified T. So there's still the priority or the shape is around like that. And their third option is a straight T intersection signalised with a slip lane. So you take your existing conditions matrix where you've filled out all of this information about the exposure, all the factors that influence the likelihood, all the factors that influence the severity, and all your scores, and you copy that, you paste it, and then you look at the design and you say, right, these things are going to change. And so here we are now, the matrix for the roundabout. And you can see I just put a little something to help the reader identify which matrix we've got here. So I just put a little roundabout symbol there and labeled it roundabout. And then used a combination of crossing things out or adding new things with red text in the matrix. So you can see there that we've crossed out some of the things that were there that were increasing the likelihood, and some of the things that decrease the likelihood of runoff road have been crossed out, and some new things have been added. So you go through and you do this for all the different things associated with the likelihood and the severity and the exposure. If whatever's happened has altered the exposure in your mind, you would change that score. You make it red, as you can see that some of these are red because those scores have now changed based on what is being proposed. And then you do it for the next one. And you do it for the next one. And you do it for as many options as they provide you and that you would like to score. And then what you have is this series of scores, the existing conditions and your options. So overall, alignment with safe system principles is better for the roundabout option, but all three of these options have better alignment with safe system principles. So that's one thing that people are looking at, that end total score. But and you know, you can present that however you want. There's a graph presenting it in a nice way, easy, clear to understand. But this is what more people tend to be looking for and to try to understand. And this is where we've got a bit more detailed interrogation of the risks or the scores. So we see here that each of these is a crash type from the matrix. And each of the colored bars is one of the options. And I've done down here some of the, colored them so fairly easy to remember. The red would be existing conditions. So you can see immediately there that some of them influence areas and others don't. So we can see there that neither of the, it was identified that, neither of these two options, the blue or the grey, are changes enough to warrant an alteration to the scoring on runoff road, but the roundabout does. So assuming that would be because of the much lower speeds on the entry and the severity of runoff roads being lower, the likelihood probably maybe be the same, or maybe not, but you'd have a look at that from the design and the existing conditions. And you can see that all go through. Cyclists, you can see there, okay, cyclists have gone up with the introduction of the roundabout. And we know that, roundabouts and cyclists aren't the greatest mix. And so that immediately can kind of sort of help somebody looking at this and say, well, what are we going to do for cyclists at our roundabout if we're going to go that option? Because, that's not a good outcome. And so that, to me, paints a pretty nice picture. And it tells you some things. And you've got some significant advantages by doing this. It's a one page that tells your story of road safety fairly clearly. It's a graph and it's got numbers, and that has some power to it. I find this amazing. The response that people have is like that. Okay, this is serious stuff. This is the same way they sort of treat the traffic modelling or the SIDRA analysis, with the report and lots of numbers and lots of things. Well, we're now producing this, and it's starting to give that extra credibility. It's amazing, even being a road safety practitioner and being in the space, that people still very new to the road safety space have their opinions, and they are so adamant with their opinion it is correct that our advice is, oh, well, no, we don't really believe that, or no, we're going to go some other track. And you go, okay, well, that, I feel when you're doing it as just, even an audit report, I mean, it has some clout because it's, called an audit and it's formalized and all, but these numbers are really something that people stand up and take notice of. So that's a big win in my mind. I often don't, reveal behind the curtain that there's a bit of subjectivity to this and a bit of judgment, but because there's often a bit of that within traffic modelling and stuff anyway. And making assumptions and the like often. But I think we'll get better and better in terms of the scoring out of this and be more and more confident with it. But it's a good tool. The reason that I was not so concerned that you might have a slightly different score to me or your team, and if my team came and assessed the same intersection, we would get a different score. The reason I'm not that concerned with it is that this is all about relativity, isn't it? So we're looking at where do we alter off this existing conditions. And so one thing that we're warning people about at this stage is comparing this site with a completely different site, as well, a different site scored by a different team, if that makes sense. The only way that you could, I suppose, reliably assess multiple sites and use them as some sort of prioritization or the like would be to have the same team with the same set of assumptions and way that they look at the scoring. So I do caution any jurisdiction going down the track of, your score must be below 100, because I dare say they're all of a sudden going to get a whole lot of safe system assessment scores that come in just under 100, because the subjectivity of that likelihood especially and severity, and it might be just nudged in the right direction. So what we want people to be doing with the outputs of these is saying, instead of oh, it's better to invest there than there, to say, okay, I got 118 originally. First thing they should be saying is, okay, everything is improving road safety, that's good, or improving alignment with safe system principles. The roundabout seems to be the best, but what else can we do to bring that score down? And if we decide to go with this one, what can we do to bring that score down? And that's where you come in with recommendations. Now, often, and in fact in the template, I think it's sort of ideas for consideration is put in there, not necessarily recommendations as such. Ideas for the project team to consider that will bring that score down. And this is where you put in all those different ideas, where, raised platform, or, you say separated shared path, or whatever you think would bring that score down. And you categorize these into primary or supporting. Non-safe system, I hope you wouldn't be recommending any of those or making them your ideas for consideration, but you may use that in your vocabulary in commentary in there. But let me take you through these. Primary, road planning, design and management considerations that virtually eliminate potential for fatal serious injury crashes occurring associated with foreseeable crash types. Again, it's somewhat subjective, but virtually eliminate, and we tend to start to categorize some things like roundabouts for the intersection crashes, for passenger vehicles, raised safety platforms in a lot of situations. Supporting road planning, design and management considerations that improve the overall level of safety associated with foreseeable crash types, but are not expected to virtually eliminate the potential for fatal and serious injury occurring. And it doesn't change the ability for a primary treatment to go in the future. But really just concentrate on that first bit. So these are things we know improve road safety, but they're not going to virtually eliminate crashes. Signage, line marking, sealed shoulders, all these things are supporting. Now, to make your life a bit easier, in the Austroad Safe System Assessment Framework, there are tables for each of the crash categories in the matrix that have some road safety treatments, infrastructure treatments, and categorize them for you into these. So I suggest you have a look at that, and it'll help you in your categorization of primary or supporting. And but I should say that what is in there is certainly not all the road safety infrastructure treatments we have. So you need to sort of calibrate your mind into what would fit into a primary and what would fit into a supporting.
And a couple of questions, if we can, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is cost considered as part of the assessment, some sort of assessment with regards to benefits of dollars spent?
No. So cost is not part of this, nor is environmental issues, cultural heritage issues. This is just about that safe system alignment. However, what you would have established in the context at the start of your project is a bit of understanding of where things are at and what's planned and proposed and the like. So what we do is we don't tend to just recommend or propose alterations and just one thing. It tends to be a number of things, often ordered in their, the primary things. Here's a few primary things that could happen and some supporting things, and trying to encourage the, the primary ones, but acknowledging that there's budget constraints, there's community issues. That the real world's a murky place for these infrastructure projects. So what I tend to do is, if I am looking at something and I go, geez, what really needs to go here is a roundabout with separated cycle facilities around the outside of it or something. That would be amazing. That would align so highly with safe system principles. But I know that they don't have the money to do that. So I may say that as an idea for consideration, that, it is acknowledged that this project under these circumstances may not have the budget for this. However, the best, alignment with safe system principles would be achieved through the separated, roundabout, blah, 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 blah. And then underneath that, you say, if that can't be achieved, some lower cost options that get you decent aligned with safe system principles, and dot point a few of those out. So the balance you have is that people often want to say, well, it's all the money I had, and so it's aligned with safe system principles. And we don't want to give that impression that just because you can't afford it, everything's fine. And we should be sort of documenting that we can do a lot better. And that, so that's sort of how I go about doing that. But yeah, if you're doing like an urban back street or something like that, and you say grade separate the two roads or something like that, it's not really going to help the project team that much, and it's probably not the right land use anyway, and the like. It. So make that judgment call yourself, but don't be fully driven by the cost implications. And you're not going to be able to get yourself a safe system assessment score, benefit cost ratio style thing. Actually, you probably could do that theoretically by change in score per dollars spent. Yeah, I'll have to ponder that a little bit more. I've never seen anybody do that particularly. I think in the back rooms of some major project offices, they're doing some things like that, are trying to look, in being nice to them, they're trying to look for the best investment of funds. If I was taking a more cynical view, I would say they're trying to game the system just to get just under that that existing condition score, so they can say that they've put a big tick next to their safe system obligations. And we are seeing some areas that where safety is not their priority, are trying to sort of game the system in that sense, and trying to combine bits of the network to get an overall score that comes down, or the classic one that's recently happened was this removal of a roundabout, traffic signals, safe system assessment score, everything's going up, and so they're sort of prodding and pushing and saying, okay, well, what about if we do a mast arm? What would that bring the score down to? And you go, well, it's not enough to that's not enough to change the likelihood score. That's still it's still a 3. And they go, well, what about if we did a high skid resistant surface? You go, still not enough. And they go, with the mast arm as well? Still not enough. And they go, what about if we do enhanced delineation on the approach and the mast arm and the skid resistance? And they're just adding and adding and adding until you just get enough that you go, okay, well that's enough to drop at 1 mark. And then they go and move on to the runoff road. So they really, the one advantage I see of this is that, they're desperate to get that score down. That's great. In the past, they would have just gone, yep, whatever. The audit said this, and we've written back, it meets the current standards or whatever, and off we go. So at least we're getting this push, but they're starting to look to game the system if their objectives aren't quite there. We deal with these things in throughout. Other questions?
Yes, please. So where do supporting treatments that affect primary in the future sit? Say, for example, roadside barriers that may need to be moved later on.
So I think there might be a slight misinterpretation there by that example, because roadside barriers that might need to be moved later on in order to widen the road or something like that would still be considered primary treatments. The easier example is that, if you signalise an intersection, it is going to make it harder to build a roundabout in the future at that intersection. So that would be actually considered a non-safe system treatment in that scenario. And it's written down there. Reduces the ability for a primary treatment to be implemented in the future. So the barriers one, unless I can't think of a scenario that would meet that, because you're basically putting out your primary treatment, which is barriers, and then down the track you're gonna have to rip them out and move them again, or whatever you're doing, duplicating the road or the like, and replace with barriers. But for the interim, you've got a primary treatment for runoff road. You might be thinking head on then, or it reduces our ability to put a median barrier in. Well, I think there you'd probably have to be cutting it into that it's sort of non-safe system for head on, but primary for runoff road, which would be quite an odd little thing to do. Most people just have it as a primary and then note that the challenge is inability to put the central barrier system in the future, which would be a desirable outcome. But maybe your recommendations or your ideas for consideration would be to widen, clear, so there's the ability to put the central barrier system in the future, which they may not be able to afford to do, but at least you've sort of helped and thought out about that.
Okay, thank you, Ken. A couple more questions. Just to confirm that we should state what we have determined as other to assist the person receiving the report. Yep.
Yep, and it's easiest to do that in the exposure category. Gee, I wonder if it was done in. Okay, so this one sort of said including mid-block rear end, side swipe crashes. So that's another clarification I need to make. Rear end sits in other if it's mid-block. It sits in intersection if it was influenced by an intersection. So the other rear end would have to be from pedestrian operated signals, or from like as in mid-block crossing signals, or maybe exits from driveways or something like that. So it's not intersection related as such. If you're worried about back of queue style issues, that sits within the intersection as well.
Okay. Does providing an alternative route for some movement types elsewhere in the network fit within this as a secondary treatment? For example, improvements to a cycle route to encourage cyclists elsewhere.
So how would you do that? I would put that probably as supporting, unless you believe that you can actually get all of the all of the cyclists to use that by doing whatever you're doing, and it's going to be pretty unlikely. You can certainly do things like if you've got one route and you are going to somehow alter it so traffic goes via another route, be that cyclists or pedestrians or motor vehicles, you can do a matrix for both routes before and after, so you get that indication of how it alters, because you're going to push vehicles onto another route. Is that route it's no good pushing them off one dangerous area onto another dangerous area, or into an even more dangerous area, is it? Or you should be getting an understanding of that. And you can do that with two matrices, two graphs, and it's quite, it can tell quite a story quite easily.
One last question. The example had a score of 118.5 out of 448. Is it kind of suggesting this intersection is not a high-risk site? It seems like the safe system matrix can also be used to prioritise safety improvement projects.
Yeah, so to answer that, is it a high-risk site? Well, yeah, I mean, you will have a feel for what your scores indicate in that alignment with safe system principles. So I would tend to agree. Yeah, I would say this is not horribly aligned with safe system principles at a score of 118, but it can certainly be better, absolutely. And so you could use that in prioritization and the like of intersections or lengths or whatever it is, but be very aware of the subjectivity of it, the difference in scoring between individuals and between groups. So yeah, you'd need to do a bit of something to calibrate everything across your program to make sure everything's consistent. I've got my colleague Chris Hall, who I mentioned before, who's the guy who likes the weighted average and does all these more elaborate ways of safe system assessing. He's currently working on some standard scoring of different treatments to try to provide, almost lookup tables or reference tables for different treatments, so we can get more of that consistency. But at the moment, nothing like that exists, and it requires a bit of judgment. So I wouldn't like to see something happen where, like, each region or each office puts in their safe system assessment scores of the 10 intersections, and then they're ranked by safe system assessment score, unless somebody centrally was to, assess them all and score them all, and then they would be, at least consistently ranked, and that would be an option. So in a full safe system assessment, I haven't even really mentioned this, but in the Victorian and the South Australian guidance, they've decided to split it into a full safe system assessment and a rapid safe system assessment. And so next week I'll explain the difference. But a full safe system assessment then goes through and looks at the other elements of the safe system. And I should remove that word pillar because we like to talk about elements, but that's directly out of the Austroads document. So that's why it says pillar. You go through each of these qualitative questions and you document some answers. Some of them will be, you'll just put not applicable because it doesn't make any sense for the project you're looking at. But some of them may spark an idea that may have some ideas for consideration to go in there, supporting ideas or the like. So you ask these questions, or you are asked these questions as an assessor. And now, are road users likely to be alert and compliant? And are there factors that might influence this? What are the expected compliance and enforcement levels? So alcohol, drugs, speed, road rules, driving hours. What is the likelihood of driver fatigue? Are you assessing an area out, in between two cities or something like that? Can enforcement be conducted safely, or is anything being altered that may impact on that in the ability to enforce? And certainly, you know, I've picked up a few in different safe system assessments that hit on that category after some discussions with Highway Patrol and police and the like, and discovering some things that mean that they won't be able to enforce some different aspects after the project's built. Are there special road users, so entertainment precincts, elderly children, or on-road activities, motorcycles? You know, is it a motorcycle route? Are there any big distracting environmental things? And is there specific risk-taking behaviour? So you're just commenting, documenting these, and seeing if they generate any ideas on alterations that could be done within the project or within the wider sort of influence sphere of that project. Vehicles. What is the level of alignment is there with the ideals of safer vehicles? That's a pretty generic question, but it's starting to delve us into that roads that cars can read a little bit, but it's also more attuned to doing an assessment of a whole township or a mine site or something like that, because you'd be looking at the fleet and what safety features they have. Are there factors that might attract a large number of unsafe vehicles? Is the percentage of heavy vehicles too high for the proposed road design? Is the route used by recreational motorcycles? Are there resources in the area to detect non-roadworthy, overloaded, unregistered vehicles and remove them from the network? Can enforcement activities be undertaken safely, and has vehicle breakdown been catered for? Some of these may actually influence your scoring in the matrix, and that's fine. Some of them may be outside the scope of the infrastructure, and you may be actually thinking, well, you know, I think that there should be, I don't know, an education session done with the school that's just around the corner on how to use the new infrastructure we're building, or a program developed to, you know, so that they use it in the correct manner, or, you know, that there should be helicopter landing pads built. Actually, we haven't got to that one yet, post-crash care. Are there issues that might influence safe and efficient post-crash care in the event of a severe injury? Congestion, stopping space. Do emergency and medical services operate as efficiently as possible? So that's probably the one where, you know, helicopter landing pads or access points to different areas for emergency vehicles might be something you'd start to consider. Are road users and emergency response teams protected during crash event? Are drivers provided the correct information to address travel speeds on the approach or adjacent to an incident? A number of these are probably more focused around motorway style. You know, the thinking would have been around that. And they needed to put these in there to cover the whole raft of road environments that we're dealing with. Is there reliable information via radio, VMS, etc.? And is there provision for e-safety, safety system based on modern information and communication technology, cooperative ITS, and those sorts of things? That's a bit of a vehicle, roads that cars can read vehicle of the future one, and it's general and open. And a lot of the time, as I say, you're probably just going to write, no, nothing in this project that we're aware of that alters any of this. But some of them may spark something. As I've sort of mentioned before, I gave you a few examples there of some of them. Enforcement ones, you know, big $100 million projects have had alterations to, you know, small bits of it that haven't made any difference in cost, that have just, you know, provided wonderful facilities for the ability to enforce through areas for booze buses or number plate recognition vehicles, and protected areas for this to happen, and different, you know, minor alterations like that, which sort of is a good indication there that we're trying to not just, you know, fix everything through the pouring of concrete and the putting up of barriers and the like, that we've got to have all elements of the system and that interaction, and, you know, what is or how is this all interacting together, and is there anything else we can put into this project? Other questions, Kathy, at this stage?
No, we're okay at the minute. Got about half an hour to go.
Yeah, no, that's good, because I'll just start to introduce the task, and there might be some questions about the task. But the reporting, what a safe system assessment report would look like is has sort of these things generally expected to be included. The type of assessment, so full or rapid, which I will explain a lot more about that in the final module that we have, and list of the members of the assessment team, any meetings and site inspections, description of the process, the project background and the context which you've developed, the matrix, and clearly showing the difference between existing conditions and any design options, commentary around the other safe system components which we just went through, suggested treatments, changes to the proposed design which would improve the alignment with safe system principles. So it's kind of similar to the structure of a road safety audit report in most jurisdictions, and we've provided you with an example one so you can get indication of that. And to make your life super easy for your assignment and probably in future assessments, we've given you a template Word document, which is actually the Victorian government one template for safe system assessments, and hopefully it'll help you. And it looks like this. And what we've done is highlighted it in the things that you are going to change. So what you're going to do is get the Word document from Schoology, the folder, or from your memory stick where it is as well. And you're going to take that Word document, and anything that is highlighted yellow, you are going to change. So you're going to write a little bit about the background of, the background of the project, as you can tell from the design you get. And you're not going to have enough information. You're going to want more information. I'm sure of it, but you're not going to get any. You get what you've got, and you can make some assumptions. And so probably for the assessment purposes and this sort of mock task, you can document any assumptions you've made on anything like that. But you're going to have to go into Excel and create your own little graph, because we want to be seeing that, because that's what people want to see. You're going to go through, you're going to fill out the matrix, and you're going to put some other things in there. I'm going to jump to the Word document in a second, but I do want to talk about your site safety and ensure that you're going to be safe. You're all in the industry, and you all have no doubt worked around roads, some of you for many, many years, and you know how to do it safely, and you have good processes and practices. And I need you to follow all your processes and practices for safety. Wear your high-vis vest. There's no need to be doing elaborate measuring of lane widths or putting your head down to look at the drainage crossfall or anything like that. Don't be a hazard to others. So if you're standing there, a few of you might be doing this in small groups. Don't make people wander around you out onto the road. Park safely. Don't cause safety issues with where you're parking the vehicle. And we've provided a safe work method statement, and Kathy will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've got to have a look at that, and then in the quiz acknowledge that you will abide by that. And it won't be anything in there that you're not doing already from your own internal processes and practices. It's just our sort of assurance that you're committing to that. You're not going to go out there intoxicated or the like. And you're not going to do anything that's hazardous. So Kathy, you can elaborate on any of that while I pull up the Word document.
Beautiful, thank you, Ken. Yeah, look, it might be a bit COVID heavy, our safe method work statement, just because of where we're at recently. But what Ken said is spot on, and it's all in the Module 5 folder in Schoology.
Well, certainly we don't want the Safe System Assessment course to be the source of the second wave in New Zealand. So, okay for COVID safe practices to be in there. I'm sure everybody's in New Zealand's operating under lots of those considerations anyway. This is the document. It's like you can get these straight off the VicRoads website, download the Word document templates. And just to make your life easy, we're not going to make you fill everything out. You can use these. They say freely to take these, to rebrand them to whatever you want, to take all their logos off and whatever. It's just trying to make a consistent format of safe system assessment outputs, the reports. So complete only the highlighted sections. So we don't even want you to give us an executive summary, because that's just adding time to your task, which we don't want. Don't worry about updating the table of contents. Don't worry about giving us all the figures and everything like that. Oh, there's one highlighted yellow. Tell us who you are. Put your name in there. If you do it with somebody else, and we encourage you to collaborate if you can, put their name as well, please. So the names of anybody that was in your team. And then, so the project context, you've seen we've crossed that out. We don't want you to fill that out. You don't have a lot of that information. But the proposed work. So a short summary of what the works are from what you can see from the design that you've been provided. You won't have any information about other stuff. You might know a lot about the project. You can put in as much as you want, but don't feel that because you've never seen this project and you don't understand the background of it and the context or what they're doing. But just in here, put in at least that, what is it? They're proposing curb out stands and a raised crossing or something like that. And then you give a summary of the scoring and how it came out and what influenced those sort of things. You put the scores in, so you're obviously going to have to do that after you've done some scoring. You put the overarching scores in for the existing conditions, which you have to assess first, and then the design option. And everybody's only got one design option to put in. You create your own graph in Excel, very simple exercise, but make sure you label it similar to this, so we clearly understand what's happening. There's your matrix, and of course you start with the existing conditions, fill all of that out, and just copy it, paste it, and then alter it. So exposure, likelihood, severity. So interestingly, this is straight out of their template, and they've stuffed that up. They've copied that text and they've copied it down there. And I don't use their template because we've got our own template, which was, they copied us, and anyway, it doesn't matter. But just be aware that even though that says likelihood, you're going to need to change that to severity. I thought that I might have picked that up and changed it in on the memory stick or Schoology, but I'm not sure I have. So just be aware of that. But you'll be right anyway, because it's in the severity line and you're all attuned to that. And then to put in some treatments for consideration. And you can see that there's two tables. There's one for primary and there's one for supporting. And so you put as many as you want in there. You do not fill out this project response. You leave that blank. Okay, that is blank. In fact, I should have unhighlighted that. I'm seeing a few ideas now. We get a lot of people submitting them, and then they fabricate some project response. The reason that column is there is to remind whoever receives the report after you do the assessment, they've got to do something, change some things, make some comments on that. If they can't do it, explain why. If we don't have the project teams acting on something, there's no point doing these assessments. I suppose unless you're using it for some other purpose. And then add a photo. Oh, sorry. The last thing we want is a photo of you on the site. So nice selfie or something. And that is for us to be confident that you went to the site. And we still go to the site for a safe system assessment. Street view and things can do something, but there's nothing like getting out there and seeing how road users use the area, just getting a feel, walking around it. in my mind, you can't replace that, and it's documented in those guidelines that you go to site for full safe system assessment. There are options in the rapid one to do a desktop only and the like, but certainly those full safe system assessments. But for our confidence that you're getting a pretty good indication of the experience of a safe system assessment, you go to site and you give us a photo to prove you've been there. And we can then keep on record that you've completed the safe system assessment course and you've done a safe system assessment and you've been to a site and you've really been through that whole process. Then you're going to finish it off, that's the last thing, and upload it to Schoology, and it will be marked. And Kathy will talk to you a little bit more about the timing of all of that. I think that's about it. Questions, and we'll talk about timing and things that need to be done.
Thanks, Ken. I'm just actually updating that document, and I'll reload it into Schoology so that the severity bit's fixed up, and also that project response bit.
I did that. It might have been with one of the other groups we're running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so timing wise, ideally what we'd like is for everyone to get out and do your site visit at some stage during this week. And if you can get it in before next Monday's session, that'll be terrific. But we understand that, you've got work and life going on. So by Monday, the 30th of November, so 2 weeks from today, is kind of the final due date on that. As Ken mentioned, for those of you who've got some colleagues in the group who are also from your same home office, you can do the report together and you can submit one report on behalf of your group. And so we'll mark that as a group one. If you don't have any colleagues from your home office, then you will need to do it on your own. And if you just prefer to go out and do it on your own, you can do that as well. Just the yellow sections, and you don't have to delete all the rest. You can just leave it crossed out is fine. So yeah, just complete the yellow sections in there. As previously, if you have any trouble uploading into Schoology, just email it through to me. That's worked great. Sorry,
Kathy, a couple of things I forgot to mention. So the sites, if for some reason you get there and the design you're looking at has already been built, which we don't think any have, but we sometimes, we get something wrong because we haven't actually physically snuck into New Zealand and looked. If for some reason that it has been built, what we want you to do is like a retrospective look at it. So you then assess the existing conditions and looking at the design, and then I want you to go to Street View and Google and look at what it used to be and score that and show how much improvement had been made, if that makes sense. Best if you discover it has been built, get in contact with us and we'll tell you what to do. Pretty sure we're good for all of this group. As I say, if it's your project, don't be too worried about it. Okay, so I'm just seeing one comment popped up about an incorrect office location. So that we were just given your office locations or the like, so if you've got the wrong one, we will reallocate it to whatever's close to you. So get in contact or write it in now. We'll take a note of that one. Hopefully you got your little pack in the mail, or what little snacks have you been having if you were at a different location for us? Anyway, all good.
Yeah, interesting. No, I forgot what I was going to mention now, Ken.
That's all right. So the sites are going to be uploaded into Schoology if they're not already live. Yeah, again, if you have any issues accessing it, finding your design, it's just going to be a one-page design. We tried to keep it fairly conceptual level. We didn't want to give you the 400-page detailed design set. for a number of reasons. It's just way too much work, and it's also not the stage you traditionally would do a safe system assessment at that detailed end. More conceptual level planning style stuff, and giving you the ability to inject some ideas and get a scoring indication there.
Sorry, I just remembered. So most of the sites are real, well, real designs, but a few of them aren't. So don't be too concerned if you're wondering where this design came from. We've had our designers just mock something up, and really treat this as a training exercise. You know, that's really what we're looking to get out of this. So yeah, just so you know, some are real, some are not real.
Yes, that's along the lines of what I was going to say, Kathy. We don't do any community consultation while you're out there showing them designs, or running over to the planning team and berating them for this thing that you've never heard about and is you're not happy with. It is a training exercise. Good. I think that you'll enjoy this, and you know, we think that there's probably a couple of hours work in it. We really don't want to go. We really wouldn't want you to be spending more than like 3 hours at most on this. If you're going well beyond that, we think you're probably making too much of the training exercise. Certainly a full safe system assessment takes way longer than that. But so if you're having troubles, or you're just going, this is taking forever, and you know, I don't really understand it, just get in contact with us early, and we'll help you out. Was that somebody asking whether they can assess their own site?
Or select their own site?
Yes, if you send it through pretty quickly, we just have a look. You're going to need a design, some sort of design, some proposal. Looks like they got the one that they were thinking about anyway. There you go. We've found some local stuff, and we've created some stuff for people who aren't in areas there was anything easily available. So, but you know, if you did need something assessed, or you feel it could be valuable, it might be a start to it, or you could practice on the one we've given you and then do a real one down the track. So any other clarity questions that anybody might have about your task? We have the next module, which is all about the process of a safe system assessment from a sort of policy perspective, the process that's undertaken for doing one, you know, these wider policy context related stuff for safe system assessments. And we will, though, have the opportunity to have a chat about any specifics of people's assessment that they're having trouble with in that sort of public forum. But we will talk about when it's best to do safe system assessments, and you know, which projects should be assessed and which shouldn't, and those sorts of things as well. And what's the difference between a full and a rapid, and you know, what's Austroad's position on these different things and the like. So we'll delve into a bit of that, but none of that changes your assignment. You have the ability to just take it, go out, look at the existing conditions, fill out your matrix, look at the design, change that matrix, create your graphs, come up with some ideas for alterations, package that up, upload it to Schoology, and you're all good. A reminder also that you have 3 attempts. So should you not be happy with the outcome of your the assessment of your assessment, we will happily let you alter it and resubmit. Yeah, that's about all I got, I think.
Ken, I might just quickly share where everything is located,
yep.
If that's okay.
Please, that's a good idea.
So basically, once you're in the Safe System Assessments course, a couple of things. In module 4, there will be the quiz for this week. So that's there for you to do. And then you jump into module 5. There's the safe work method statement and agreement, your assessment, which I'll just upload that new version with those bits fixed. And then there's the site plans there. And they've basically been loaded by your name and which office. So Ben, I think you suggested you've moved, so you can just jump into the Hamilton office one and have a look at that. And then basically, if you click on that folder, great, you're seeing that now, and then there's your site there. Probably best to download this document from here. I've found that sometimes the AADT data that we've put on there doesn't necessarily show up, or it just does some interesting things to confuse me. But if you just download it here, then you're good to go. Any other questions on that?
That was good. Doing that. It's really easy for people to find, and yeah, definitely download it and download. You're going to need to download the Word document definitely to fill it out. Sorry,
we do need to do a site visit, don't we, Ken?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. If you need to defer the site visit to a later point, we can work with you on that. But just for consistency on handing over certificates and what people have gone through, we want to make this consistent. We've required everybody that's done this course over the last 4 years to do a site visit, and we're not quite prepared to change that. So yeah, it doesn't need to be a long site visit, just getting a feel for it and the like. Certainly, I think in a full, well, if you're doing one for real, you'd probably be out there for a lot longer, and maybe even go out at multiple times of the day to see different things. But for this experience, you just get a bit of a feel for it. And I apologise if you feel that that's a bit of a waste of your time because you know the intersection so well or the like. But again, it's just keeping it consistent for everybody is far easier.
Okay, last chance for any last burning questions. Otherwise, get in touch with us during the week, and we look forward to seeing you again next Monday.
For the final session.
For the final session. Mm-hmm.
Good. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Terrific.